All right, welcome everybody. Thank you guys for being here. To start us off, we have Jim here. Jim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure there. Thanks, Roger. Um, Hi, everybody. My name is Jim. I am part of the leadership team at Code Platoon. I apologize. I'm outside. I got caught in an appointment. But I want to just welcome everybody to this course. We're really glad you're here, whether this is your first time exploring programming or you decided you've dabbled around with it a bit before. We hope you're in the right place. Over the next couple of weeks, you guys are going to be um, getting hands-on in Python. It's one of the most beginner-friendly programming languages. It's widely used in the business world. Um, and so this is where you're going to get your foundational understanding, whether you use it to go on to a career as a software engineer or just dabble around and making your own apps and programs. Um, this class is going to include 9 live sessions, and by the end, you'll have a solid grasp of the basics of Python. And this is going to be the foundation for where you want to go from here. And we're hoping that that part of that where you want to go from here is attending Code Platoon and one of our boot camp programs. Also, though, if you decide to go to another boot camp, this will be the foundational understanding you'll need to be successful in one of those programs as well. So um, keep that in mind as you move through this. If you are interested in attending one of our future cohorts, our full stack or DevOps cohorts, um, this is important. We're going to teach you the fundamental components that you need to know to be successful in the classroom. You will make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes when they're learning to program, and even when you're a programmer. It's completely okay. It's in fact how you're going to learn. So really encourage you to keep going. Think of coding errors as just little like signposts. They're showing you where to improve, and with each one you get better and better as you move along. Like I said, this is 9 sessions. They're all live. So we encourage you to try to join as many of them as you can, but we understand that life happens. So if you miss one of the sessions, no worries. They're all recorded. Every session will be recorded and uploaded to our Code Platoon YouTube channel the next day. So you can catch up, you can rewatch, then really stay on track. If you are applying to be in the Avenger immersive cohort, just a heads up, you'll want to complete your application for Code Platoon and schedule your technical assessment right after this course ends. If you're hiring a future cohort, just make sure you submit your application before the deadline for that cohort. And of course, like if you have any questions about the application process, the deadlines, or what to expect, feel free to reach out to me or Greg Drobny. He's our recruitment manager. We have really easy email addresses to remember. It's Jim at Code Platoon or Greg at Code Platoon. We're here to help you start the way. So I just wanted to welcome you on behalf of the leadership team. Code Platoon's a unique space. In 9 years, we've had over 700 people move from the military community into jobs in tech. And so if this is the beginning of your journey, we're happy to have you here. And we're looking forward to see what we can do to help you and see where you go. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Roger.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate that. Well, welcome everybody to our introduction course. My name is Roger. Quick introduction is I am a United States Army veteran. I served 8 years as a combat engineer. I transitioned from the service very similar to how a lot of you guys are doing here. I encountered Code Platoon via the VecTech program. I went through the courses that Code Platoon had to offer. I went through their full stack immersive program. I was part of Uniform Platoon. I graduated through Uniform Platoon, where I then volunteered as a TA. Throughout my time as a TA, I worked with the instructors. They were, I guess I would say impressed with the work I did. They extended me an opportunity to join them. And I currently serve as one of their instructors. I do take part of the Foundations of Programming instructor as well. So I teach that course, and I'm currently teaching the introductory course as well. Thank you guys for joining me. You guys should have received some different emails throughout the last couple of weeks. We recently had a info session about 2 weeks ago. For those of you that attended, thank you very much. For those of you that didn't, during the introductory course, we did mention, uh, what you would require for the course, that we're going through here today. And one of the requirements is requiring a GitHub account, right? So I know some of you guys have already created that. For those of you that showed up here a little bit earlier, but for those of you who came a little bit later, take the time now to go ahead and open up your browser and on Google, look up GitHub, right? It should be the very first thing that comes up. GitHub is a form of version control, which we can talk about later on. But GitHub is going to be what we require to open up our curriculum for the course. All right. You do not require any fancy installations. You do not need a brand new computer. You don't have to go get a new MacBook. Whatever computer you have right now should work fine. You don't have to do any crazy installation like installing Python, Homebrew, whatever you're doing, Ubuntu. You don't need any of that. This is an introductory course, so it's very simple. We will do everything through GitHub, right? So you don't have to install VS Code. I'm going to show you how you can create some form of a virtual environment on GitHub on your browser that's going to allow you to run the curriculum without having to do any crazy installations. Also, for those of you that have just joined, I would like for you guys to take a quick minute and fill out the attendance form. As mentioned by Jim, attendance is not mandatory, but it's highly encouraged. The attendance form allows us to keep track of the numbers, mainly for marketing, like how many people sign up, how many people show up to day one, how many people make it halfway or all the way through. It just helps us, for future courses as well. So please take a moment to fill out the attendance form. It shouldn't take too long, more than 30 seconds, if I'm being honest. You're gonna notice that we have a different population of people here within this course, right? Some of you guys are here for a future course that might be at the end of the year or even next year. Some of you guys might be doing evening and weekend programs. Some of you want the immersive program. Some of you are trying to get into the very incoming cohort, which is the Adventure Platoon. For whatever reason you are here today, it doesn't change anything, right? So every single one of you guys have the ability to be successful. I will say a quick disclaimer for those of you who are attempting to apply to the very incoming cohort, which is the Adventure Platoon. I want to be completely transparent. If you want to ensure that you get into that incoming cohort with a very tight deadline that we have, you want to make every single class, you want to do every single assignment, and you want to make sure that you are putting hours behind your keyboard. I see the attendance form doesn't populate for me.
And
Is that
my virus blocker called it. I'm not sure if that's going to happen to anyone else.
okay? Yeah. Let me see if I can kind of share my screen and show you guys what it should look like. I do apologize. I'm currently in Japan right now, so I do not have my desktop, my additional screen. So do bear with me. You should be seeing my browser. Is that correct?
Yes.
So when you guys click that attendance form, it should look something very similar to this, right? So it checks out. It's in you here. You're gonna put in your name, last name, and email. That's just gonna give us a notification to our HubSpot, letting us know that you filled out the attendance form. I see OCAS work for me. Yeah, nothing crazy here. Trust me. We're not trying to do anything malicious here. We just want to make sure that we have attendance. But yeah, so let me go ahead and stop sharing. So once again, going back to as what I was mentioning, if you are attempting to take part of Adventure Platoon, you want to ensure that you're putting some miles behind your keyboard. I mentioned it earlier for those of you who are like on your iPhone. If you're like on the road or you're listening to this via, while you're driving on your phone, I do not recommend it. Coding is one of those things that you kind of want to be behind your keyboard, going through the trial and error, through the headaches, and then debugging it and figuring out where you went wrong. You want to learn through trial and error. So, highly recommend as you sit through this course, you want to be behind your computer. All right, you should all be within the Slack channel. I sent out the message earlier. we have the link to the Zoom link. You have the one for the curriculum, and you have the one for the attendance form. Now, if you click the curriculum, you should be brought to a page that looks fairly similar to this. Let me go ahead and share my screen. You should be brought to a page that looks very similar to this. This is going to be the GitHub repository for our course. The title is a little outdated, but the curriculum is the same for everyone here, right? This is going to be what we are going to use for the remainder of our course. For those of you that are not familiar with GitHub, GitHub is what we call a form of version control, right? So what that means is it allows us to kind of save folders and work in groups with other developers where we can work on the same project without affecting the main project, if that makes sense, right? So if you recall, like, you know, a long time ago, before we had easy access to like USB storages, or we had stuff like Dropbox or the cloud, and you were creating some kind of essay at school, but you had to go home because school ended, or your time on the computer ended, but you weren't done with your essay. So what did you want to do? You would save, you would make a copy of that Word document. You would save it on a USB drive, and then you would take it, home to work on it on your home desktop. We didn't have the cloud before, right? Where you can just save it somewhere. You'd have to save it. You would create multiple drafts of the same document until you got it right, because you didn't want to affect the original document, right? That's kind of what GitHub does for us. We're allowed to save a folder, a directory that holds our main project, and then be able to create almost like branches or copies of the original, where we can create an updated version to replace the old, right? And this is going to allow us to all be on the same page, for all of us to use the same curriculum. But the biggest reason that we're using GitHub is the ability of code spaces. And code spaces is essentially a virtual environment. It's like a sandbox where we can open up some form of editor where we can use files to write code, right? I'm sure for those of you who have been interested in coding, you've done some research, you've gone on YouTube, how to run code. You probably encountered the term VS Code, right? Or some form of other editor that you require to install, right, to run code. Well, we are, keeping that out of the equation. We're going to keep it very simple. If you have a GitHub account, which everyone should have at this point, what you're going to do is you're going to navigate to the top left corner of your GitHub, and you click these three bars, right? It's going to open up a toolbar on the left, and you want to navigate to code spaces, right? Now here, it's going to direct you to what looks very similar to when you open up a new Word document, right? So when you guys open up a new Word document or a new PowerPoint, it's going to prompt you to create a blank document, right? Or a blank PowerPoint. But sometimes it also prompts you with do you want to use a template, right? This is fairly similar to how that works, right? When you open up your code spaces, it's going to ask you if you want to create a blank code space, and it's going to give you some templates as well that you can choose from. We're going to create a blank template. So using this template, I want you guys to click it. As you see, I already have two created, but we're going to start a new one here. And this is the first time you run this. It might take a little bit longer for some people. If you've used CodeSpace before, it typically goes faster. The first time I did this, it took me like 5 minutes to load this up. I don't know why, but it should open up something fairly similar to this. If you've used VS Code, this should look very familiar. Essentially, what this creates is a version of VS Code on your browser, right? This eliminates the fact that the point of having to install VS Code, having to install Python, having to install other stuff that you don't want to install or have on your computer, especially if you're like working on a family computer or something very like that. Now, once you're at this page, what you're going to do is you can either customize this environment, or you can scroll down and click Mark Done, right? So this window that's open up here, it's just allowing you to customize your VS Code environment. It doesn't really matter. If you guys want to do it, you guys can. You're going to move your mouse to the center of this page here. You scroll all the way down and click Mark Done. Right? And we should now be at this point here where it's going to ask us if we want to create a new file, open a file, or clone a Git repository. Now, this is what we want to use here, the clone a Git repository. Repository is just a fancy word for folder, right? Or directory. We essentially want to clone a Git folder, right? And that Git repository or Git folder is the curriculum that we want to clone, or in other words, copy into our environment. So how do we do that? Well, if you go back to the page on a different tab, where the curriculum is at, you're going to see there's going to be a big green button that says code. I want you to press that button, and it's going to prompt you with a new window. And there's two ways to do this. You can use the code spaces section. We're not going to do that. We're just doing it manually. Here on the local tab, you have the clone section. And with HTTPS selected, which should be the default, if I'm being honest, you have this URL. You can copy and paste it by just pressing this copy URL to clipboard. And then we're going to navigate back to our code space tab. And we're going to click Clone Git Repository. And they should open up the search bar at the very top. Right? It says provide repository URL or pick a repository source. We're going to press Control V or just paste it in there. And notice here that it says clone from URL, and then it prompts me with the URL I just pasted. Just press enter. And then it's going to prompt you with where you want to create this, right? So very similar to your directory on your computer, right? Your documents, your downloads, your pictures, that directory on your computer. It does something fairly similar to that here on your browser, right? It has folder directories. By default, when you create your code space, there's a bunch of folders that it creates already and installs in your little environment. That's what this directory file path is, right? You don't have to add anything specific here. Once it prompts you with this, you can just press enter again. We don't need to specify where we want to put it. Just press enter. By default, it puts it at where it should be, or like the lowest level. And then all you're gonna do is click open. You'll see here that's gonna set up my code space again. We'll give it a minute. Using that URL from GitHub, it's going to copy the curriculum and add it to my environment. And as we see here, after about 15 seconds, my curriculum has populated, right? So you do not need to install VS Code. You do not need to install any additional software. All you need is a GitHub account. Once again, from the top, you're going to go to the top left of your GitHub account. You're going to click Code Spaces. You're going to set up a blank code space, and then you're going to clone a Git repository with the URL of the curriculum. And you should be at this part. Now, we're not ready just yet. So, the curriculum is written in Jupyter Notebooks. Don't ask me why we wrote it in Jupyter Notebooks. I think it was easier when we did it, and now we have to go through some additional hurdles to make sure you guys can run it, but that's okay. I see Chris, please slow down a little. Move it a little fast for me to navigate. All right. So I'll try to slow it down. But I do want to give you a quick disclaimer. There is 40 of us in here, so I'm going to try to slow it down as best I can. But just for the sake that we actually make it through the entire course within the allotted time, there's only so much I can slow down. So everything is recorded for that exact reason. So if there's something that you guys might have missed, or maybe you didn't understand too well, You can always check the recording the following day. But I will slow down, especially because this is very important to ensure that everyone's on the same page. Chris says, where do I paste the GitHub code? Yeah. So one more time, very quickly. When you create a code space, let me delete some of the old ones. I believe you have a limit of 3 code spaces you can have created, which is why I'm deleting the old ones. But you're going to create a blank template for your code space. After it sets it up, what you're going to do is you're going to skip the customization. You can customize your VS Code if you would like. I would just go ahead and skip it for now since we are on a timeline. But you're going to scroll down. You want to hover your mouse right here in the center of your code space to actually use this scroll bar. And you click Mark Done. Once you click Mark Done, you're going to be prompted with a new file, open file, or clone Git repository. You're going to click Clone Git repository. And then you're going to copy and paste that URL in the search bar right here. Hopefully that answers your questions. Also, I do want to say that because I currently only have one window right now, I might not be able to see the chat if you guys are like asking questions. So I encourage you guys, if you have a question, if you're confused or lost, stop me. Come off mute and ask your question. I won't find it as rude. I encourage it because I'm usually just teaching and I'm not looking at the chat. So do not hesitate to ask questions. I will try to cover the curriculum again if someone missed it. If you have any questions, but if we start falling behind on time, I might tell you to save your questions to the end. No hard feelings, just for the sake of the fact that there's 45 of us in this class, and we all have time that I want to. I would like to respect everybody's time. Right? It is the evening. I'm sure everyone's tired from work, so just a quick disclaimer. All right. So up to this point, everybody should have something that looks very similar to this, right? You should have the curriculum clone. Now, before we move forward, I want to ensure that everyone can run code in here. We're going to go ahead and open up lessons. On the left side, you should have your directory, right, of all the folders. There should be a couple folders. You're going to see exercises, graphics, and lessons. The only ones that you need to really worry about is exercises and lessons, right? The graphics is not important. These are the pictures that are used in the curriculum. They have to be in here so they populate in the lessons. So you don't need to worry about the directory. Don't worry about the get ignore or the readme, to be honest. For those of you that showed up to the pre-course, there should have been an email sent out to you guys to read the pre-course. There should have been a link to the video. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you guys not receive that email? It should have been like a link to the video to the info session 2 weeks ago. Can someone confirm that? Yes, I see Norma say yes. Right, there should have been a video. That info session, it was about an hour long, but we discussed everything that we just discussed. The setup of GitHub, the setup of the code spaces, and also the email should have told you guys as well to read the pre-course before class. The pre-course essentially is an introduction to the course. It talks about who we are, the instructors, me. It goes into some tools that you can use. It talks about VS Code, Jupyter Notebooks, GitHub code spaces. So if you guys want a little bit more information on everything that we just covered, or on us, I recommend go through the pre-course and read through it. It talks about some introductory stuff in Python, which is nice to know before you start. There should have been the email for the sake of not repeating this during class. But do check it out if you haven't at some point. It has some good stuff at the very bottom, some video tutorials, interactive learning platforms, if you're not familiar with some of these. Documentation references, book guides. I think these are free. Eloquent JavaScript is a pretty good one. This is this is the latest one. Wow. Okay, I can't believe they give this for free. But yeah, so if you want to expand on JavaScript, you guys can. I talked about the forums and communities. We're using GitHub today. So if you want some more information, definitely go through the pre-course. But all right, let's go ahead and move forward. What we are going to do is I want you guys to navigate to lesson 1. We're not going to go through it just yet. I want you to scroll down until you reach a block that looks something very similar to this, right? Under examples. This is what we call a code block, right? We have like regular markdown blocks where we have text, and then we have code blocks that we can write code in and then run. The way to run this is on the left side of the code block, there should be a play button. And if you click it, it should execute the code that's within this cell. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to get an error right now, and we'll talk through it. But when you try to execute this, it's going to ask you like choose a kernel, right? But we don't have kernels installed. Now, Roger, what's a kernel? Well, in layman terms, it's a form of, I would say, like an interpreter, right? It's the way that the computer can talk with your code, right? In a sense, to run the code that you're typing in, right? So whenever you type in these commands, the computer needs to know how to understand it, and that's kind of what the kernel does, right? So we need to install that, and this is one of the reasons why we use code spaces, and we're not installing VS Code because it can get very conflicting with so many people in this class trying to navigate everyone's installation. This is why we use code spaces. But when you try to run this code, you're going to be prompted to select the kernel. But you don't have all the extensions installed. So we're going to go ahead and run that. You're going to see here install/enable suggested extensions. And it says Python plus Jupyter, right? If you were running this on your computer, you would have to install Python. You would have to install Jupyter. You might have to create a virtual environment. And it's just a bunch of hurdles. We're eliminating all these hurdles and just streamlining the process. So all you have to do is click on install and enable the suggested extensions. And you're going to see here at the very bottom, it's going to start installing Jupyter in Python. Just give it a couple seconds while it goes through the installation. Jupyter's done, and Python. There we go. Awesome. It should have finished. Let's try it again. Yeah, I think it's working. Right on. Let me try another one. There we go. Yeah. After it installed all that, you should be good to go. It essentially installed Python and Jupyter into your environment in a sense, right? How does that work? Well, that is the beauty of VS Code. It's extension based, right? So if you wanted to run in Python or in JavaScript, or if you have different things that you want to have in your VS Code environment, you do it by extensions. Now, in the event that for whatever reason it did not install Python or Jupyter notebooks into your code space, what you are going to do is you're going to navigate to the left side of your screen, and you're going to see what looks very similar to Tetris blocks, right? When you hover over it, you're going to see that it says extensions. And you click on that, and it's going to open up a search bar on the left side. Now, there's some stuff that I already have installed here, thanks to me installing Python and Jupyter, as you saw like a minute ago. But if you have anything else that you want to install, you would come here and you would look for it. Let's say in this scenario, I don't have Python installed. I would type in Python. You're going to see it's going to search for it. And if something's not installed, it'll have the install button next to it. If it is installed, you'll see a wheel, right? Like a a gear on the actual extension itself. So that means it is installed, but I can manage the settings of it. Right? Notice that Python debugger and then the other Python stuff is already installed. What you'll also see is that there are multiple different Python stuff, like Python Path, Python Extended. If you're new to coding, this might feel a little intimidating. Rule of thumb, you usually just install the one that has the most downloads. So as long as you say it's Python and no additional extra stuff at the end of it, and it has like the most download, like more than likely that's the correct extension to install. Right? Notice how this one says just Python. Same thing with Jupyter notebooks. Right? If it did not install Jupyter, just type in Jupyter with a Y instead of an I. You can see here it installed multiple different Jupyter applications. You can still run this if you just install this one Jupyter notebook extension and nothing else. It'll still work. I'm not quite sure what all these extra stuff is doing. I think these are just quality of life extensions, but don't worry too much about it. But yeah, in the event it did not install it for you, just go to the extensions toolbar on the left side and you can install it manually. Let me see the chat real quick. Yeah, you guys want to go to lessons, right? So this is your toolbar, right? So if you were at the extension section, just go to these two pieces of papers, which is the Explorer section, and it will take you back to your directory, right? Under lessons, these are all the lessons that you should have. We are currently within lesson 1. And we ran a couple of these cell code blocks to ensure that everything's running, right? Now, some extra stuff I want to cover. These pages, these tabs that I have open, what are they? Well, they're Jupyter notebook files, right? How do I know they're Jupyter notebook files? Well, for one, they look like Jupyter notebook files, but also in the directory, you will see here, these are the file names, but they end with IPYNB. That is a Jupyter notebook. What would you call it? Suffix? I don't know. It's the extension of it, right? If you are familiar with Python files, they usually end in .py, .py. If you are familiar with JavaScript, they usually end in .js, right? Any file that you have usually ends with some kind of code word, right? I believe PowerPoint is like PPWTX, I think. I don't know off the top of my head, right? If it's a text file, it'll have the text file extension on it. But depending what type of file it is, it's gonna have some way that it ends. So does that mean, hey Roger, like can I not run like regular code? Absolutely, you most absolutely can. How do I do that? Well, this is the directory of all my folders and files. If I wanted to create a Python file or a JavaScript file, right, I would navigate to the directory here, right? And what I would do is wherever I want to create this file, I can right click it. I think I have something saved on my clipboard, but it should open up something very similar to this, where you can do like new file or new folder. If you want to be specific at where this file or folder is created, you want to kind of click on the folder that you want to open it in, and then you will right click it there. I'm just going to go ahead and do it here. I'm going to say right click. I'm going to say new file. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new Python file, right? So I'm going to call this examples.py, right? What makes this a Python file? Well, the fact that it ends with .py, it lets your computer know that you want to create a Python file. So make sure that you end it with .py. After I press enter, it's going to create that Python file. It's going to automatically open it up as a tab, right? I don't know what this is. Press Control plus I to add to anything. This might be part of the extensions that were installed for Python that helps you like code easier, but we don't need this. All I'm going to do is going to create a line of code that says print hello. And now On the top right, you're going to see a play button. When I hover over it, it says run Python file. All I'm going to do is click this play button. And at the very bottom, you're going to see that it's going to run that file. It says hello. I can say hello, students. And I'm able to run regular Python code here in my code spaces. So although the curriculum is written in Jupyter Notebook files, if you wanted to create additional files to work on, whether it's just typing out some code or adding notes, you can create a text file if you wanted to. If you wanted to run the exercises in JavaScript, you can create a JavaScript file as well. You can do that, right? And just open up a tab and write some code, right? So I encourage it, especially because I know Jupyter Notebooks can feel a little intimidating. It's kind of weird to navigate with the way that the cell blocks are broken up to. So if you want to run code like this and follow along as I go through the curriculum, I encourage it. You don't have to have the Jupyter Notebook files open. I will have it and I'll be sharing in my screen. What I recommend from you guys is open up a Python file very similar to the way I just did. And then as we talk about different parts of the curriculum or about Python, you can just go ahead and code it here and then just run it and see what it prints out. This is essentially where you would write the code. At the very bottom, this is your terminal, right? This is where you see the output of your code, right? So when I run something, if I'm printing it out, it's going to show it here. So this is your terminal. Up to this point, do I have any questions before I move forward? I see Matthew Markov. For the purpose of this course, would it be best to keep AutoPep 8 off due to learning correct format? I don't know what AutoPep is, if I'm being honest with you. I've never used it. If you're talking about extensions that autofill your code, yes, I recommend it 100% throughout your entire journey of you learning, right? Mainly because it's a crutch, right? It is a crutch in your learning process. You have to go through the trial and error. You have to encounter, issue with your code and build on your critical thinking skills, right? Because that's really what coding is problem solving and critical thinking, right? The language itself, Python, JavaScript, it's literally a language, right? It's in the name. It's how you communicate with the computer. So the way that you and I communicate through the English language, the way that you communicate with the computer is quote unquote Python, right? But the actual coding aspect of it, in writing code, a lot of it is just problem solving and just critical thinking, how to navigate through a problem, breaking it up into smaller, digestible parts, right? Tackling it one at a time and building a program. So if you have these fill programs or like AI extensions that are helping you complete your code, that is going to mess up your learning journey 100%, right? It's not going to allow you to learn. And then when it comes to interviewing for a job and you don't have access to these AI extensions or autofill extensions, you're going to realize that you did yourself a disservice. I had an interview where they told me to pull up a Word document and write code in this Word document, right? You're not going to have some kind of terminal or editor that you can run your code, see if it's working, and debug. They're going to give you a problem. They're like, all right, give me a solution. You got 15 minutes. And then you have to code it out in this Word document, like this shared Word document. They're watching you code. You don't have these extensions or, these quality of life applications that help you auto complete your code. So if that's what AutoPep is, yes, definitely turn it off. It's not going to help you out. If you close your terminal, can you open up a new one under the hamburger symbol? I don't know what the hamburger symbol is, but if you do need a terminal, let's say you close the terminal. Let's say I close it, right? I press X. If I press Control and tilde, it'll open it back up. And there should be a section where I can open up a new terminal Where's it at? I'm not used to this to BH. There we go. If you go up, oh, this is the hamburger symbol. Okay. Yeah, if you go up to the three lines here, you click it, go to terminal, and just click new terminal. Right. It even gives you the shortcut Control Shift C to open up a new terminal. If you close it up, notice that there's two terminals open up here. Right. So you can open up multiple ones. You can have multiple tabs open. All right. Control J reopens terminal. Okay. One thing that I do want to cover, because I'm sure you guys are asking yourself, well, Roger, I went through the intro self-paced, the self-paced intro to coding course, right? And it was all written in JavaScript. And now we are about to go through a course that's written in Python. Should I be here? Is this the correct course? Absolutely. First and foremost, disclaimer, our courses are going to require you to know JavaScript and Python. You're also going to have to learn HTML and CSS. You're also going to have to learn SQL, right? So if you feel a little intimidated, like, oh man, like this is a Python, all I know is JavaScript, I shouldn't be here, then you're worried for no reason, right? We're going to require you to learn all these languages. When I came through this very same courses that you guys are going to go through, I came in learning nothing but Python. And then I got to intro the coding course, it was in JavaScript. I was like, what the heck? Like, I don't know JavaScript. But you can still complete the challenges, the coding exercises in whatever language you want during the application process. Once you go through the three challenges, you can do them in whatever language you feel comfortable with. When you do your technical interview with Guillermo, you can do it in whatever language you feel comfortable with. And both JavaScript and Python are fairly similar, right? They're known as a high-level language, and what that means is that they share a very huge similarity to regular human language, right? So stuff like English. All right, for example, just look at this code snippet of Python. I put print hello, right? You can kind of use, the context of the code here that I'm trying to print something out, right? I'm trying to print it out on my screen. But what am I trying to print out? I'm trying to print out the word hello, right? So it's very user friendly, right? It's easy to pick up, right? If you know English, you can easily learn something like Python. You can easily learn something like JavaScript. And as you go through this course, you're going to realize that, oh man, like Python has a lot of similarities to JavaScript, just very small differences. For example, in JavaScript, when you're working with Booleans, and for those of you that do not know what Booleans are, that's okay, we'll get to it. But for those of you that do and have gone through the self-paced course, you have to write Booleans, capitalized or lowercase, right? In Python, if you write true or false, lowercase, you get an error. But notice that when I write it in capitalization, I don't get an error, right? Because the difference between Booleans in JavaScript and Python is as simple as capitalizing the T and the F. So they share similarities, right? With some very, very small differences. So if you know JavaScript, you can pick up Python very easily. So if you feel like, oh, I'm not going to be successful because I started with JavaScript, that is a myth. All right. Do I have any questions before I move forward? Any questions about anything that we covered so far with the setup, GitHub, the curriculum, or anything about the program itself at all?
No, thank you.
Brian Tran asks, can you walk through one more time where to put the URL? All right, this is gonna be the last time, guys. Last time that we go through this. In code spaces, once you create a new template, I reached the maximum. What? I got 2 though. Delete. All right. There we go. Once you create a blank template, it's gonna open up your code space. Give it a little second. The first tab or window you're gonna have open, it's gonna be a walkthrough of the setup. I recommend just skip it, scroll all the way to the bottom, and click Mark Done. It's gonna remove that from there, and then it's gonna prompt you with new file, open file, or clone Git repository. Click on Clone Git repository. When you click this, it's going to open up the search bar at the very top, right? That says provide repository URL or pick a repository source. This is where you put the URL. Okay. That seems to cover it. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. Let me go ahead and close these out. For those of you guys that want to know or want to go through other recordings, if you are having issues with the setup, you can check other recordings of the sim course that we have taught. If you type in Platoon in YouTube, it should. Let me see if I can just do it again. It should show something very similar to this. This is the Platoon YouTube channel. You're gonna click on this. You can go to playlists, and you want to find Guided Application Winter 2024. Right, this is the last class that was taught. You can press play all. The only downside to this playlist is I do not have these numbered by order, which I do apologize. I should probably go back and fix the order of this. But you want to go to Python data types and methods. This is day 1 of the last time that we taught this course. I'm not gonna go through this ad, but if you go through the first hour, I don't know exactly where I'm teaching this. You can find the setup as well. Also, this video will be uploaded to YouTube as well by tomorrow. So if you missed something or didn't feel comfortable with the way that it was explained, you see it again, you can go through tomorrow's recording and go through it. Every single class is going to be recorded and uploaded by tomorrow. Joseph says it is backwards. Yes, it is backwards. Thank you for pointing it out. Yeah, tomorrow the video will be uploaded and ready for you guys to see. I will also be sending it into the Slack channel in case you struggle to find it on YouTube. I'll send the link directly so you guys can have it. I'll probably also add the YouTube playlist link onto the Slack channel in bookmarks if that makes it easier so you don't have to scroll through messages. The Slack channel will be our primary means of communication from me to you guys or from you guys to each other. So if you guys want to make little study groups or whatever, or you have questions, feel free. I encourage you guys to talk in the Slack channel, ask questions, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I'm currently in Japan right now, but I will be traveling back to the United States on Wednesday. So I will be more available within the same time zones that you guys are by the middle of this week. An email should have been sent to you guys as well in regards to the schedule. The schedule of the course. It is Mondays, Wednesdays, and I believe Thursdays. From 6 to 9. Just give me a second. Let me just verify that. But this week it changed due to the fact that I am not in the state and I will be traveling. So I do apologize for the inconvenience. This week it'll be Monday, Thursday, and Friday. But the next week and the week afterwards, it should be Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. All right, so this is the only week where we will not have class on Wednesdays. It will be Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. As a matter of fact, I also send a Slack channel message specifying what dates we will have class. The time will stay the same between 6 and 9 in the afternoon. As I mentioned before to you guys, class is not mandatory, right? But I highly encourage you guys to show up to every single class, especially if you want to make it into the Avengers cohort, right? That's coming up pretty soon. Obviously, his code space should just open up in the tab. Yeah, it should just open up in the tab, guys. You can use on your browser. Pop-ups might have to be turned on, I think. So if you have an issue with that, let me know. I'm usually available anytime in Slack. If you guys have questions, you guys can message me directly, or you guys can just message the Slack channel. Whatever helps you guys. And then if you do message the Slack channel, I'll get back to you guys as soon as possible. We'll be taking 10-minute breaks after every hour, so you guys can use the restroom or have a little coffee or whatever helps you guys. Yes, Norma, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, class is Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 6 to 9. However, this week it will be Mondays. Monday, no, it's gonna be Monday, Thursday, and Friday normal. I'll send the schedule. But time is 8:51. That takes care of the introduction part of today. We're gonna come back in 10 minutes and we're going to start lesson 1. Time is 8:52 for me. I will see you guys in 10 minutes. All right, welcome back, guys. So we finished talking about the setup of code spaces, right? We talked a little bit about what to be expected for the course. Once again, our usual schedule is Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 6 to 9 p.m. This week, very specifically, will be Monday, Thursday, and Friday. All videos will be posted the following day, so you should have it by the morning. The reason why it takes a little bit too long is because I have to download the recording. It is 3 hours long. It typically takes like 45 to an hour to download onto my computer. And then the uploading to YouTube takes just as long. For it to be with like good resolution, it takes even longer. So it does take some time. All videos will be sent to you guys via Slack as well in a link format. I will add the playlist in the bookmark section. Everything that we will be doing will be here via Codespaces, so you do not need any kind of installation besides just the walkthrough of how to go about the setup of your Codespace. If you are still struggling with the Codespace setup, I'm going to do it one last time at regular speed, so please have it open up already. And then we're going to move forward with lesson 1 of today. So here I am within my Codespaces. I should be where the clone git repository section is at. If you have any issues, you could probably do something like, let's see, where can I wonder, clone git repository. I wonder if I could do it from here. New window profile. Open VS Code, my code bases. All right. I'm not sure if I can reach this in a different way. You can definitely open up a new file or open file. If you did not have this page after you skipped the walkthrough of your setup, I would just delete the code space, restart it. At some point, this should be the first and only window you have open, right? You're going to click on Clone Git Repository. It's going to prompt me with the search bar at the very top that says provide a repository URL or pick a repository source. Now, I would need to add the URL from the curriculum. So I still have this tab open from the curriculum. If you need to get this curriculum from somewhere, it's provided in the Slack channel. If not, I'm going to add the URL to the Zoom chat, in case you do not have access to Slack right now, there is the URL. So use that. You're gonna click clone Git repository, and it looks like the copying and pasting seems to have an issue here, right? So if you are having issues with pasting the URL, press Control and V. Right, I believe if you're using like Mac, I don't have Mac, but I believe it's like Command V. I think you guys have like Command instead of Control. So either one of these will work. It should paste whatever you have copied, right? And after you have the URL in the search bar, all you need to do is press Enter, and it's going to ask me to choose a folder of where I want to clone my curriculum. As I mentioned to you guys before, when you create this code space, by default, it populates a bunch of different folders that it requires for it to work, right? You do not need to worry about all that extra stuff. It does not pertain to you. You can ignore all these other folders. It's not important, right? So because we're just going to ignore it, I'm just going to go ahead and press Enter. Once I press Enter, you're going to see here that it's going to say that it's cloning my Git repository. And I should get this window where it says, would you like to open the clone repository or add it to the current workspace? I'm just going to say, I think I can just do open. It's in green here. I think add to workspace is very similar as to open. Do not click open a new window because it's gonna be a mess. Just click the green open button. It's going to refresh your browser, right, with the updated code space now cloned into it. Right, you have to give it a little second. I don't have any extensions, right? We talked about what it takes to run code in Jupyter Notebooks. So I'm going to navigate to lessons, go to lessons 1, and this is what we're going to be working on. I do not really need my terminal open because with Jupyter Notebooks, when you run a cell block, its output will be directly underneath that cell block. If you have a Python file open or some kind of other coding file open, then you need your terminal open so you can see the output of it. But Jupyter Notebooks does not require that, and I'll show you what I mean a bit. But I'm going to go ahead and close this terminal because I don't really need this terminal. We're going to navigate to lesson 1, Python data types and methods. And real quick, before I actually start the lesson, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try to run this line of code to make sure it works. And notice that it doesn't work. This is a brand new code space I created, right? It says install/enable suggested extensions. I got this the moment I try to run one of these cell blocks here, right? How do I run them again? Well, you press this play button on the left side of the cell block. It's going to execute that cell. But because I don't have the extensions installed when I try to run it, it tells me select the kernel. But notice that there's here a light bulb, right, that says install/enable suggested extensions. Well, I don't have any extensions. I haven't installed anything. Well, by pressing this, it's going to automatically install the required extensions I need. Notice here at the very bottom right, it's installing Jupyter and Python. For those of you who are like, might feel a little intimidated with the pace, I go through this every single class. You guys are not the first class that takes like an hour to set up. I promise you. Every single person, like every single class I get, there's like, oh, it's not running or it's not working. So it's okay. We get people of all different skill levels, right? Some people like live behind their computer. We've had people who've never really touched a computer. They went and bought a whole brand new computer just for this course. And I tell them like that, you know, it sucks to hear because they didn't need to do that, but they didn't know what they required, right? So don't feel intimidated. It's okay. It happens every single time. Once we get here, you should be able to just click Python environments. After you click Python environment, just click the version of Python that was installed here. It should just be Python 3.12.1, right? That's all you need to do. The kernel that you want to select should be the Python extension that we installed, right? And these should run as intended. Once again, what kernel do we select, Roger? After you install Python in Jupyter Notebooks, you're going to click on the Python kernels, right? It's going to give you a selection. The only selection you will have will be the Python language that was installed. It should be like Python 3.12 something, right? That's the most updated version that they installed here. And now we can go ahead and start. If at any point you need to clear out your output of your cell blocks, we have a couple of options up here, guys. You can add a code block, right? These are code blocks. So if you want to create your own code block, you could. You can add a code block. You can add a markdown cell. Well, what is a markdown cell? That's these cells here that have text. They look like regular text, but if I click it, it opens this up, right? This is the raw text format that I wrote it in. It's right now in editing mode, which is why it looks like this. If I want to stop editing, I can press stop editing cell, and it goes back to the preview version. Right, so this is a markdown cell. If I want to run all these cell blocks, I can press run all. I do not recommend you do that. You're going to get errors, and you'll see why later. You can restart your kernel. There's no real reason to do that. But if you want to clear all these cells that you run, you can press clear all outputs. Before we move forward, once again, if you want to create a Python file that you want to use to write this code in, go down to your directory on the left. You can right click it, or you can just click where this directory and then press new file. So either one of these will work. All right, and then create your file or your folder, and then add the .py at the end of the name. All right, that's going to allow you to write some code. But without further ado, let's go ahead and start. For our first lesson of the day, it's going to be the Python data types and methods. Right. So Python, as I mentioned to you guys before, Python is at its core just a language. The same way that you guys communicate with each other using English, that's how computers communicate with us and how we communicate with the computer, right? That's what Python is, right? And just like the English language that has certain rules, so does Python, right? We call it grammar when it comes to English, right? You know, grammar, punctuation, right? There are certain rules that goes into writing in the English language. In code, we call that syntax, right? What we call grammar in English, in code, we call that syntax, right? Syntax refers to the set of rules that defines the structure of this programming language, right? So the way that you type it out, any indentation, the keywords that you have to use, that's known as syntax, right? And syntax is very important. The same way that an apostrophe can show ownership in English, or how a comma can separate, you know, two different parts of the sentences, you require that, right, in Python as well. The syntax is very important, right? And why is it important? Well, for one, it ensures that you can read your code efficiently, right? If we didn't have set grammar rules or set syntax rules, it would be very chaotic trying to read through large pieces of code. And it also prevents runtime errors. So what does that mean? Well, if we didn't, if you don't know syntax, or your syntax basics is off, right? If you miss an apostrophe somewhere or a semicolon, if you didn't punctuate something correctly, when you go to run your code, your computer's gonna yell at you. You're gonna see a bunch of messages on your terminal saying error. So, you know, whatever error it might get at whatever line, it might be a bunch of red words. You're like, what's going on? It's not working, right? These are runtime errors. And it can be very confusing, especially as a brand new coder, right? Because you're not familiar with these errors are. And to be completely honest, you probably won't feel comfortable with these errors for a while, until you've seen them multiple times and you looked up what this error is. Even now, like, I encounter errors I've never encountered. Like, yo, what is this? And I have to go look it up, right? So it happens. There's so many errors out there. but the syntax is going to be the most basic errors that you are going to encounter as a beginner, and that's okay, right? So it's important to ensure that you understand what syntax is. Indentation in Python, right? So in Python, the way that we determine where code starts and where code ends is by the indentation or the spaces in our code, right? So whenever we want to start a new block of code, we will essentially indent it at least once to the right with the tab button, or 4 spaces, right? When you press the tab button on your keyboard, it's going to automatically shift it 4 spaces to the right. And the indentation matters, right? Other languages, as you may be familiar with, if you've done JavaScript, specifically the intro to coding, the code blocks is determined by curly braces, right? We don't do that in Python. We do not use curly braces. We use the indentation to specify where code starts and where code ends, right? Indentation must be consistent within the same block, right? If not, you're going to get runtime errors. Now, here we have some examples. Before I move forward, we're all looking at my examples section of lesson 1. Is that correct? Can I get a head nod? Right on. So here's some examples of what correct indentation and what wrong indentation looks like. If this looks a little foreign to you, that's okay, especially if this is your first time seeing code. Don't worry too much about it. We'll get into it. But here, we're doing a Boolean check. We're seeing if something is true, I want to print these 2 lines of code. Now, the line of code doesn't really matter, really. It's the indentation that we have to pay attention to. Right here, there is 4 spaces. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, right? This is 1 indentation to the right using the tab button. This is correct indentation. This should print out, if true, print, this is indented correctly, print, this is still part of the same code block. Notice that when I run this, it passes the true check because the indentation was correct. I didn't get any errors when I ran it, and I'm able to print out successfully these 2 lines of code. Now, what does wrong indentation look like? Well, here's a prime example, right? Notice that the indentation on these 2 are completely different. When I run this, I get this error here that says indentation error. Unindent does not match any outer indentation level. It even showed me where I got the error at. This caused an indentation error right here. Specifically, it told me on line 3, right? So you'll get error if you have inconsistent indentation. You have to indent at least 4 spaces, if I remember correctly, right? What if I want to add more code blocks? Well, I would continue indenting, right? The next time I want to do something else. Like if true, print this. If false, print whatever, right? So you want to ensure that you indent correctly. Do I have any questions about indentation, where code starts or where code ends? Notice that whenever I start a new code block, right, I'm using a colon, right? I'm not using curly braces. The colon lets it know, hey, I'm starting a new code block. I go to the next line and I indent it to the right. Don't worry too much about this right now. We're gonna get some practice. Start very easy. Comments. What are comments? You might have noticed before words and pieces of code that's grayed out, right? Comments are just lines of code that are not executed, right? That are ignored. This allows you to document your code, right? Especially if you have a bunch of code and you're working in groups. Comments allows other developers that are working on the exact same project to understand what your code is doing, right? Comments are very important and something that I encourage for you guys to do as often as possible, and something you're going to see me do as well whenever I'm coding along and demonstrating something. My first interview, I was asked to demonstrate a project that I completed throughout my time in Platoon. I think they were like a month apart. from the time that I graduated and I got this interview. And I had not touched this project in the longest time. Right? I did this project, I believe, halfway through the course. When I went to demonstrate this project, I had no idea what I was looking at. I created that application, but it looks so foreign to me, right? And I spent a good 5 to like 8 minutes looking for a specific section that they asked for. They're like, "Hey, where are you doing so and so?" I don't remember what exactly they asked. The amount of files and folders that I had, the lines of code, I had like 700 to 800 lines of code in just one file specifically. To filter through all this was a nightmare, right? And because of my lack of comments, I didn't know what half of these functions were doing. And we'll talk about functions later on. But if I would have proper documentation, if I was properly commenting on certain functions, just small little keywords to allow me to remind myself what is doing what, it would have saved me that headache and the embarrassment in front of my interview. All right, comments. If you don't build the habit early, it's hard to kind of start up later on. So highly encourage, as you're coding along, add some comments to your code and stuff like that. I see a message here, guys, in the chat. Sorry, maybe you covered this already, but I thought full stack dev had to know JavaScript. Why are you introducing Python? Just curious. That's a good question. So right now we are in a curriculum shift, right? We had our introductory courses built in JavaScript. Somewhere along the line, right? Because we've had instructors come and go. Another course is building Python, and somewhere along the line, we kind of got off. We kind of diverged a little bit, and stuff started being in different languages. You need both JavaScript and Python, right? These are both languages that you require in our course. We are currently shifting to make sure that everything is the same language for introductory course. So I believe you probably have seen, like, in the chat on Slack, on the intro coding, that we are currently working on our courses. We have some issues and we're getting them fixed. So there are some differences, right? This is written in Python, where if you did the intro course self-paced, it was written in JavaScript. That's why we are shifting it all to Python. There's no specific reason, right? It's not like Python is better than JavaScript. If I had to say, I would say Python is easier to pick up. I think it's a lot easier than JavaScript. So we are currently in that. If you are coming in here knowing JavaScript and you're a little intimidated that this is in Python, do not fret. You need both of these languages, right? Which one you specialize in so you can go to the application, that's on you. But both of these languages are needed, right? You need to know both of these languages to graduate from our course, right? To do the work. You need to know at least one when you come into day one or of any of our courses, whether it's JavaScript, Python, and then you kind of have to make sure that you're learning the other one as you're going through the curriculum. We do a good way to ensure that you're learning both of them. We give assignments that alternate between both languages, so you're getting just enough work on both of them, so you ensure that you're not getting rusty on either language, but you will be expected to learn both. I've never seen anyone not pass our courses because they couldn't learn the other language. That is not a reason for people not passing. So if you feel intimidated with the fact this is in Python, I promise you 100% that's not an issue to be worried about. You need to know both. And as a matter of fact, as you go through this course, you're going to realize the similarities in both languages. And it might even help you see it in a different light, like understand it. Because sometimes the syntax in one language can be a little confusing, but then you see it written in Python, you're like, oh, okay, that makes so much more sense. Why is the JavaScript written this way? Like it just makes no sense. It'll help you click a little bit better. Hopefully that answered the question. I believe Andy is how you pronounce your name. I'm sorry if I butchered that. Going back to the curriculum, we have two ways of writing comments, right? We have single line comments, and the way that you start that is by using that hashtag, right? That hashtag is a way to it's used as an escape character, right? It lets your interpreter know, okay, this is not code, this is a comment. I will not run this line, right? So I wrote one comment here. This is a single line. Notice that the next line has code, but it's followed by a hashtag and some words, which are then grayed out, right? When I run this, it ignores the comments and it only prints out hello world. I did not get any kind of error. But if I take off this hashtag right here, I will get an error, right? Invalid syntax. So that hashtag tells your interpreter that it is not a piece of code. It is raw text, and it should ignore it, right? This is for you as a developer to be able to read and understand. You don't need to actually run it. Here's multi-line comments, right? You do this by using triple quotes, right? If you have a bunch to write down, which, by the way, I do not recommend to add like a bunch of lines of comments. It just becomes very messy, and if it's too much words, can get very confusing. Especially if you're adding multi-line comments for every different section, it just makes it unbearable to navigate through. So keep your comments simple and straight to the point. So if you do have to use multi-line comments, you can use them. Just don't overdo it with like 10, 15 lines or just straight comments, right? But this keeps you from just using multiple hashtags for every single comment, right? It just looks messy. All right. So to avoid using hashtag for every single one, you could just wrap it around in triple quotes, right? And when I run this, it prints out hello with no issue, and it ignores what's between the triple quotation marks. Awesome. Do I have any questions on the syntax, comments at all? All right. I'm trying my best to make sure I stay up to date with the chat. Once again, if you have any questions, come off mic, ask away. I also encourage you guys, those of you that do not have your camera on, it helps me to see some faces, so it knows I feel like I'm actually talking to somebody. So, all right, thank you guys for those of you that do have your camera on. It helps. I promise you. Let's go ahead and move forward. The next thing we're going to talk about is going to be our variables, right? What is a variable? I have a cute little graphic here. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit. If you guys can't see my screen at any point, let me know and I can zoom in and zoom out as needed. But a variable is I like to think of it as a box, right? It is a named location that points to somewhere in memory, right? I like to think of it as boxes or compartments, right? Think of a dresser, right? Your dresser is your computer's memory. It could be whatever big, whatever it may be, right? And every single drawer is a location in memory, right? That's what we mean by like where stuff is stored at. A variable, the way that it works is that you declare a variable, you give it a name, right? In this instance, this little box, this variable, is called my name, right? And the variables hold different forms of data. In this instance, what we're holding is a string, which is just another fancy word for like a word made out of like letters, right? Or even numbers. It's alphanumeric, right? The string here, the word that it's holding is my name, Roger, right? That is a data type that this variable has inside of it. The name of this variable is called my name. And there is an address, right? There's an address attached to this variable. By default, your computer automatically gives it a random address, or it finds it suitable to store it in. You don't have to define where you store it. It'll do that for you. And it looks something fairly similar to this, right? It's a bunch of different numbers. To you, it means nothing, right? But to your computer, It's the address of where in your storage it's saving this variable, right? It's very similar to a URL, right? When you guys go to GitHub, you don't type in an IP address, right? You type in the word GitHub, right? GitHub.com. It would make no sense if every single website we had out there, the only way to reach it was by adding the raw like IP address to it, right? Or like the location of where it's at. So what do? We put a label on that bad boy, right? We give it a domain name, right? Similar to how we're doing here. Instead of giving it, passing in this memory address, we put a label on it. That label is the variable name, right? So we can locate this piece of data somewhere in our memory. And I'm trying to use like terminology to keep it very simple. Does this make sense so far of what a variable is? It holds some form of value. The name that you give it is essentially just a label to help you find this piece of value inside of your computer, right? What value it is can be many things, right? We have strings, we have integers, which is another word for numbers. We have floats, which is another name for decimal values, right? Boolean values, which stands for true or false, right? There's different data types that you can give it. Dictionaries, and we're going to cover all these data types, right? The name you give it is up to you guys. Now, how you name it does have some form of rules, right? You want to give it a relevant name, right? If you're going to create a variable that's the name of students, what do you think you should probably call this variable? Student maybe underscore name. Student name 1, student name 2, whatever it may be, right? You wouldn't call it, my pet and then give it the value of a student name. That just doesn't make sense, right? So when you're creating variables and you're declaring these names, you're giving them names. Make sure the names that you give these variables are something that are easy to memorize and make sense. So when you're working with other developers, they're looking at your code, they understand what this variable is and what its intention is, right? So ensure that using relevant data, variable names is important. When declaring variables, you might notice there's a little difference between JavaScript and Python. In JavaScript, you use let, right? If you use JavaScript a couple years back, you might have used var, right? Which is a little outdated. But when you declare a variable in JavaScript, you use let and then the name of the variable, and then you assign it a value. In Python, you do not need to do that. If you have any experience in other coding languages like Java or C# or anything like that, you might be familiar with having to declare what type of data type is saved to this variable, right? You would have to give it like, hey, this is going to be a string and then the name of the variable. And you'll see an example of this. I believe I have it in here. Okay, I do not. I haven't touched this in a hot minute, so I do apologize. But if you're familiar with other languages, you have to declare what type of data type it is. You do not need to do that in Python. You just start naming away. And we see that here in this code snippet. We have a couple 4 variables that have declared. Once again, if you're not familiar with code, you don't know what strings and floats and booleans are, don't fret, that's okay. The main point or the main thing to take away from this is how I'm creating this variable. The first variable I create was age. And to assign a value into a variable, right, to give it some kind of value, you use the equal sign to show ownership. Hey, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to save the number 27 to the variable called age, right? So the variable itself is age. What is the name of it? Well, it's age, right? What is its value? The value is 27, right? I did not have to specify that this is an integer, right? By default, Python automatically knows this is an integer. In other words, it's a number, right? Python is smart enough to understand that this is a number or an integer. The next line is name, right? This is a different variable. Notice here when I hover over it, it's kind of breaking it apart. It's showing me what sections of this is, right? The variable itself is name. I'm assigning it the string John. Notice that the way that I define a string is by using the quotation marks, right? You can use single or double quotation marks to declare a string, but Python, once again, is smart enough to understand that this is a string being saved into name. Another one we have here is price. We have 29.99. This is what we call a float, which in other words, it's a decimal point value, right? I was able to assign it a float. This fourth one is a Boolean type, right? This variable name is valid, and I assigned it the Boolean of true. Booleans are just true or false. That's what Booleans are, right? Whether something is true or whether something is false. Also notice that is valid. The way that I described or I created this variable, I'm using an underscore, right? I'm using an underscore. You might see people create variables with underscores. You might see them capitalize every other word, something very similar to that. These are what we call naming conventions, right? In code, we call this naming conventions, right? Different languages have different naming conventions. The two popular ones are what we call camel case and what we call snake case, right? If you start with JavaScript, if you've seen people coding JavaScript, you might have seen people coding with a naming convention being camel case, where you start the word in lowercase, and then every word after that is capitalized, right? The naming convention for Python is snake case, right? Where instead of capitalizing the second word and every word afterwards, we separate the words with underscores, right? So in Python, we code a snake case. In JavaScript, we typically do camel case. Roger, is this mandatory? No, it's not mandatory. It's not. I can do camel case as well in Python, and it'll still run perfectly fine. But why do we do this, Roger? Well, it's just to understand what kind of language you're writing. You might go somewhere where you're writing a snake case in JavaScript, or vice versa. Ultimately, it's going to come down to where you work at, right? The naming conventions, or I guess I would say the SOPs, the standard operating procedures for wherever your work environment is, will dictate how you code, right? Everyone has different rules and ways that they do stuff, and you're going to have to adapt the way that they code to ensure that there's uniformity between your programs, right? So nothing is mandatory. It's suggested, right? It creates some kind of guidelines for us to stay on the same page, but nothing is mandatory in regards to the naming convention. All right. Let's go ahead and check this out. So here we have a way to see the ID of our variables, right? I told you that when you create a variable, it gives it a memory address. If you want to see that memory address, what you can do is use the ID method. And we have a small little description how that works. Instead of just printing out, and I'll show you how we would print out, I can print out name and just a name. And you'll see here that it prints out John. But notice that when I print out name and price, but this time I wrap them around this method called ID, instead of printing out the value of this variable, it's going to print out the memory address of where this is saved. All right, so if you want to see where it's saved, notice that it's a numerical value. Right, so you can see where it's stored in memory. This is a memory address. The variable name itself just makes it easier for us to understand. Does this make sense so far before I move forward? Why does the memory location of float change every time you run the code? Yeah, the float specifically, I'm not quite sure why the float is doing it. It might be a Jupyter notebook thing. Why would you need to see the memory location anyway? You don't. I'll be completely transparent with you. You don't have to. I've never had to like naturally had to do it. Andrew said to hack. All right, bro. To hack. I don't know. I've never had to use it. We show you guys to give you a better understanding of what variables are and how they work. You don't need it, right? So it's just like a nice way to hopefully make it click a little bit more for you, if that helps. Rules for naming variables. You must begin with a letter or an underscore, right? A letter or an underscore. You cannot contain spaces or special characters, right? So no spaces. That's what we use the underscores for, or the changes of capitalization after the first word. No special characters to know, like exclamation marks, question marks. Those are not allowed. Case sensitivity matters. All right, this is very important, right? My name, right? The variable my name is not the same as my name. These are two different variables, right? The way that you actually write the variable name, whether it's capitalized, there's underscores, does matter, right? So know that these are two different variables, right? You want to avoid Python keywords, right? And this goes for every language, right? There's some reserved words or keywords, as we call them, that you are not allowed to use. And these are reserved to do specific things that are built into the language, right? So you want to avoid stuff like if, while, class, function, etc., right? So these reserved keywords that are used in the syntax to declare stuff, you want to avoid using these within the naming conventions. You'll probably get some errors. I have to fix this. It's supposed to say snake case, not snack case. But yeah, we use snake case. You see examples here: my underscore name, my underscore age, and then a very long variable name. Do I have any questions before we move on? Awesome. I see something in the chat. We should create our own language that does use snack case. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. All right. Constants. What is a constant? Right. Constants are variables, but these are variables that you should not want to change, right? Now, I believe this does not lock this in as a constant, but it's more of a naming convention. So there's stuff that doesn't change in nature, right? High gravity, there's certain things that you might not want to change, right? It varies on what your code is, what the intent of it is. But if you want to create a variable that you know should not be updated later, you declare that with all caps, right? This lets them know that this is a constant. In JavaScript, we specifically use const as like a prefix for words that should stay constant, right? In Python, we make it in all caps. But these are typically variables that should not change. A lot of these are stuff that you see like in nature or set rules that you want to prevent, right? You use constant to store fixed values throughout a program. And here's another important part. You typically want to keep constant at the top of the script for easy reference, right? They can be very difficult to find, especially when you have like 500 lines of code. All right. Different data types. You kind of already saw a quick description of them, but we're going to go ahead and go through them real quick. One of the data types that you're going to encounter are the words true or false, right? This is what we call a Boolean, right? You're able to check what a type of data something is using this type method, which we'll see in a little bit. But if you do check the type of a variable, it's going to return to you with some kind of keyword. If you check the type of a boolean, you're gonna get the return of bool, right? So if I would have checked the is valid, and I can show you that here. If I say print, and I'll say type is valid, what this is going to return to me is bool, right? Class bool. It lets me know that the data type saved in this variable is a Boolean type, right? So you're able to check what something is, and I can do this with the other stuff as well. I can do it with string. So let me say type of name, and it says class string, right? So that's what it shows here for the display. But these are some different data types. We have the Boolean, which is just true and false. Roger, when would you want to use something like is something true or false, right? Let's say if you're making a game, right? Let's say you're making a game and you're trying to keep track when like the enemies, when an enemy should be dead or not. You can create a Boolean called is dead or is alive, right? If it's alive, then you set it to true. And then you can do some kind of loop that whenever while the Boolean is set to true, then the monster or the enemy should be able to move around and attack other players. But if the Boolean is set to false, then it should not be able to do any of that, right? So Booleans allow you to set conditions to do one thing or another, depending on what that Boolean is. All right, so Booleans are very important data types. Another data type that you already saw is an integer, right? And these are your whole numbers, right? You saw that earlier with the age, which was set to 27, right? This is an integer. These are your whole numbers, right? These could be either negative or positive, right? But these are your integers. So we don't use the word numbers, we use the term integers, right? If you're into math, these are common things that you probably already heard before, values like this. Decimal numbers. We don't say decimals, we say floats, right? We call them floats here in Python. If you're familiar with other languages, you get a little bit more specificity when it comes to decimal points. You can make big decimal points or small ones. We don't specifically really do that in Python. We just call them all floats. So if you want to create a decimal number, that's called float, right? If you check the type of a decimal value, you'll get the type of float be returned to you, right? We saw a string, right? These are supposed to be like words or like characters, right? And you'll see that you can use numbers as strings as well. And I'll show you that in a little bit, right? But strings are typically what's supposed to be represented as almost like text, right? Like the text. And then there's the none type, right? Or non-existent. This can be a little confusing to understand, which we will talk about a little bit later. But it's just an absence of data, right? An absence of data. If there's nothing in there, it's just type none. All right. Different data objects are given specific data types. So the computer knows how to store them in memory. We have here a small little code snippet of 1 plus 3, right? Notice that the 3 is wrapped in quotation marks. If I try to add these together, when I run this, you see here that I get an error, right? I tried to add 1 plus 3, and I got unsupported operand types for the plus, right? It can be a little confusing reading this error here. But what this is saying is that, hey, I don't support this action. Like Python does not support the ability to add an integer and a string using the plus sign, right? That's what this error is really telling you in English. What this is saying is these are two different data types, man. I can't do this. I don't know how to add a string and an integer. And this is important because other languages can do this sometimes, right? In Python, we do not allow that to happen at all. No go. Right? So how would I get these to work? What would I want to do? Well, I would want to remove the quotation marks. Right now, the way that I created this equation, the 3 is considered a string. Well, I have to remove these quotation marks, and that lets Python know that these are integers. By default, it's smart enough to know that these are integers, but it's not smart enough to be able to do the math between a string and an integer, right? So if you want to actually get this to work, you have to remove the quotation marks. Well, what happens if I add quotation marks to both 1 and 3? What would this do? Well, you won't really get an error. What you'll get is it will combine both of these values together, right? It conjoins the string. So if there were 2 different data types, it's going to take it as if you're trying to add them, right? If they're the same data type, if it's both integers, it's going to actually sum them up. But if they're both of string value, it's going to conjoin them together, right? So the way the plus sign works here is going to dictate on what the values it has to the left and to the right of. So just keep that in mind. You are able to conjoin strings in this manner, and we'll talk about this later on. So don't dwell on this too much. We'll talk about equations later. Casting. So I showed you that I would fix that 3 by just removing the quotation marks. But what if you don't want to just go ahead and manually take that out? Well, you're able to change, or I guess you could change the type of data type your value is, and we call that type casting, right? Type casting, right? We change the data type of a value. So typically, you don't want to go in there and manually remove or change data type, right? You want your code to do it for you, right? At some point in the code, it should be able to change the value of something. You don't want to run your code and then you have to manually go in there and change something once it gets to a specific step. You want your code to do that for you, right? So in code, we would code that by using typecasting, right? And notice that here we have the exact same equation. We have the 1 plus 3, but instead of manually removing these single quotes, what I did is I wrapped the string of 3 around parentheses, and I'm specifying that this should be an integer. Everything within this int wrapper, right? Because this is really a wrapper here. It's wrapping the 3 around parentheses. Everything within this integer wrapper should be converted into an integer, right? And then it should add it into the 1. If we run this, you see here that it was able to successfully add the 1, which is an integer, with the 3, which is a string, by methods of typecasting, right? Do I have any questions before I move forward? Right on. You'll see here as well that there's other ways of doing this with other data types, right? Notice here that this one, instead of integer, it's wrapped around a float wrapper. When I run this, by default, the result is another float, right? Even though this is a whole number and this is a float, it defaults to a float, right? But it did successfully add the 3 and the 1, and it returned to me a float value, right? Here, instead of converting the 3, we're converting the 1 into a string. What is this going to give me? Correct. It's going to join them together. 13. Right? Instead of adding them up, as you guys saw earlier, when I try to join 2 strings together using a plus sign, it conjoins them to make one big string, right? So it returns to me with a string of 13. You said, Alvin said, what would be the use case for this? There's different reasons. why you would want to use typecasting, the first reason that comes to mind is which can be, it's a little out of scope, but sometimes when you're getting data and converting it, um, it might be given to you in the form of a string, right? But you need to use it in the form of an integer, so you have to convert it into a value that works for your program. And that's the best way I can explain it without confusing you. Just know that when you're working with different data types, you're going to encounter different data types, and you're going to have to convert them. Not everything the same, right? If I'm getting data from like my front end to my back end, it might come in a string format. But let's say I'm getting like your PIN code, right? Let's say my application is a PIN code for your bank, right? My application needs to know how to handle that. In the front end, it might be sent in the form of a string via some kind of. See, I like get deeper into this, it gets a little bit out of scope. Just know that the way that data is sent back and forth is not always in the same format, and it's important to know how to convert it in a way that fits your program, if that makes sense. Hopefully that answers your question, Albin. Oh, that's a great example, Scott Walker. Yeah, if a user inputs a string, I need to be able to convert it into an integer, right? So it depends how the data is being inputted or received, right? Thank you for that. Here we have an example of using the type, right? We have the my variable. We can already see here that this is a float. When I run the type method around the variable, it prints out float, right? So you're able to print out a type of some form of variable. All right, here's something important. A limitation to typecasting, right? You need to make sure that whatever you're trying to cast into a different form of data type, it actually matches. Here, we are trying to convert what looks like a decimal value, or in Python words, a float. We're trying to convert it into an integer. When I run this, it's going to give me an error, right? Because Python doesn't know what you want to do with that 0.56. Should I round it down? Should I round up? Should I just remove it all completely? How do I convert this into an integer? It does not know that, right? So you need to ensure that whatever you're trying to typecast can actually be successfully formatted into a different data type. And same thing goes with stuff like this. What if I have int and I have a string of 3? It does not know what 3 is. It's not smart enough to understand that this is supposed to be a number, right? So when typecasting, ensure that whatever data type you're trying to change actually fits that format, right? That's very important to understand. All right, guys. We are currently within within the 1 hour mark. Let's go ahead and put a pause here. We're gonna go in our last 10-minute break for the night, and I will see you guys back in 10 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. We're gonna go ahead and continue from where we left off. A quick shout out to the chat. Joseph here shared the YouTube video to the explanation of setting up your code spaces from 2 weeks ago during the info session. So if for whatever reason you were not able to make it, do check out that YouTube link. He mentioned that it starts about 33 minutes into the conversation. Hopefully that helps clear out anything or any confusion in regards to code spaces, because this video might not be ready until tomorrow morning. But without further ado, let's go ahead and continue. We left off in talking about typecasting, and I believe that's where we ended. The next thing that we're going to cover was going to be the booleans, which is true or false. I did mention to you guys before, what exactly true or false really is, and how it works, or why we would use it. Here we have a very small description or explanation of how it works. Some of this stuff might be a little bit out of scope, especially if this is your first time seeing code. But don't fret, I'll explain it as best I can, and then we'll eventually get to this later in the curriculum. But here we have a small code cell where we declare a variable, right, called current temperature, and we assign it a value of an integer, which is 67, right? After we created this variable, we are doing an if-else check, is what we call it, right? We're checking if the value of current temperature is one thing or another, right? If-else, right? That's what the if-else statement is doing, right? So here, the first line of this if-else statement is saying, hey, if current temperature is less than 68, I want to create a variable called heater on and assign it the value of true, right? Otherwise, it should be set to false, right? That's what an if-else statement does. Once again, a little out of scope for now. It just kind of shows you how Booleans really work. So just bear with it. But we are doing a comparison, right? An if-else statement. If current temperature meets this condition, if it's less than 68, then I am going to set the heater on to true. And if it's not, that means it's not cold enough. So the heater should be false, right? It shouldn't be on, right? And that's how values can work, right? Like the Boolean values, right? This statement compares the current temperature to the integer 68 and then creates a Boolean value, right? That's how Booleans can really help us keep track of different things, right? Use comparisons. And then now that we have this Boolean set to either true or false, we might have other lines of code that actually turns on the heater, right? Very small example. Does anybody have any questions about this code snippet? Let me actually run it. Why? What happened here? Whoa. What are you doing? There we go. I'm sorry. We run it. Let me print out because it doesn't show anything. Let me print heater on and see what it actually is. It's true, right? Because current temperature is 67. So when it gets here, it's going to check, hey, is 67 less than 68? Well, yeah, it is. So heater on should be declared and set to true, right? If not, then it'll be set to false. But notice that when I print heater on, it does give me true. So this worked, right? It was able to pass this check right here, therefore setting heater on to true. Let's go ahead and move forward. Numbers. Right, there are two types of numbers we see in programming. We see whole numbers and decimals. We kind of already touched up on this, so I won't dwell too much on it. We have whole numbers and decimal numbers, right? Floats. I'm gonna run both of these to see what types they are. Notice that when I run the type method around the number 23, I get int, and then for the decimal, I get float. When I add integers and floats together, by default, it's going to return to me a float, right? It'll still do the math, right? But I will get a float value because it has to take into consideration what this 0.5 is, right? So by default, it'll return to me a decimal or a float, even if this float value is rounded down or rounded up, right? It'll still return to me a float, right? It just defaults to this float value in the event it's not 0 and it's something else, right? It needs to take that into consideration. All right. Operations between floats and integers will result in the most precise form. If a calculation between an integer and a float occurs, the result will always be a float because it is more precise. It's just a different way of explaining what I did explain. Here are some mathematical operators, right? This is how we do math in code. If you've done JavaScript, all this should be pretty much the exact same, right? Nothing changes here. Exponents, right? The way that we declare exponents is with 2 asterisks, right? Multiplication is 1 asterisk, where exponents is 2. And we'll see these in action in a bit, right? To declare multiplication, we use an asterisk. For division, we use the /. And it's okay if you don't memorize all these from the start if you're new to coding. But we'll have some work on this, and you can try these out. Mess around with this in your Python file, get some numbers, and start dividing them and whatnot. But this is just like the little table as a reference. Floor division, right? How do you round down when dividing? Well, we can divide normally with the /, but if you want to round down, you would use 2 /. And there is a way to round up, but I believe it's not in the curriculum. Modulus. This is an interesting one. Modulus returns only the remainder of division, right? So what does that mean? Well, if I have 15 divided by 3, right, it divides evenly, right? 3 will fit into 15 5 times. So what if I do 15 modulus 3? What would that return? Knowing that the modulus returns only the remainder of division, exactly. I see a hand there, Scott. Yeah, it'll return 0, right? If I were to do 15 modulus 3, it's going to return 0 because 3 evenly divides the 15 with nothing as a remainder. Now, if I do 16 divided by 3, that's going to return to, or sorry, let me correct myself. If I do 16 modulus 3, that'll return 1, right? Because it divided evenly 5 times, but it had a remainder of 1. It didn't know what to do with it. So 16 modulus 3 will return 1. Right, so it returns the remainder of what the division was. Make sense? All right. And then addition and subtraction, that's pretty standard here. The plus sign and the minus sign. Just a reminder of what happens when you try to add 2 strings. We saw that at play. So you could use addition for that. But this is how you do adding addition and subtraction, right? These are your basic operators when it comes to math. Like you learned in math class, Python performs arithmetic operations according to the rule of operations. You guys remember that? PEMDAS, right? PEMDAS, the first thing that it prioritizes is parentheses, followed by exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction, right? So that still applies here. So if you've gone through basic elementary math, this should be nothing new. But I do understand some of we've been out of the game. So it's okay. Here we have an explanation of it. Right, we have the 1 plus 70 within parentheses divided by 4.3 plus 8 to the power of 5, right? Because it's 2 exponents. So this would tackle this first. It'll do the exponents, then the multiplication, or we don't have any multiplication here, we only have division. And then finally, it'll add it all up together, right? And here we can see the result of it, which is a float. Why did it return to us a float? Well, for one, if we're dividing with a float, so it's going to return the most precise method, which was this, right? Here we have a form of division, which, as we saw earlier, this is floor division, right? So it's going to round down. 23 divided by 4. I'm not exactly sure what it is. It gave me 5, right? But what if we remove this? It's going to return a float decimal, right? 23 divided by 4 would normally give me 5.75. But what if I don't want that, that float value? If I want to round down to know what the whole number, but rounding down is, then we use the floor, right? And notice here they give me a whole number this time. I do not want that that decimal value or that float value, right? I don't remember off the top of my head. W3 schools. What is for rounding up? Here we have one of the resources that I highly recommend. Highly recommend. W3 schools is typically my go-to. I try to avoid ChatGPT for those of you who are using AI. Try to avoid using ChatGPT as possible, and the reason for that is because part of coding is knowing how to find the answer, right? For very simple stuff here, like Python and learning JavaScript, basic syntax stuff, these are easy to find. We have websites like W3 Schools that are very easily formatted. But let's say you get to a job that you are supposed to learn a whole new framework. Let's say Django, right? Django is something that you're gonna have to learn for our program. This is very difficult to navigate, right? This can be very intimidating. So it's important to understand how to read documentation, right? This is official documentation to Django, but what if your own company has their own documentation for their code base, right? You can't just put private information into ChatGPT, you know? That's not legal. So you're not going to be allowed to do that. So it's important to know how to find the answer. For those of you who are military, I know we have a mixture here of military spouses and children. For those of you who are military, made it to leadership positions, one of the perks for us is knowing how to find the answer. Right, as you get higher into the echelons, staff sergeant, sergeant class, and above, the leadership schools they stop really teaching you stuff. They start showing you more of how to find the answer. So I think that's one of the perks of our military experiences. You know, we might not know everything, but I know how to find an answer if I needed to, right? So get comfortable with using these resources, documentation, or just simple stuff like this. Try to refrain using ChatGPT as much as possible. I always use it as a last resort. If I've exhausted the documentation, if I exhausted forums, colleagues, ChatGPT is usually my last source. Unless, of course, you're crunch on time. That helps too. But here we can go to, let's see, Python roundup. If you guys need to know how to do something, you guys, there you go, math.co. W2 Schools is awesome. If you wanted to round up, unfortunately, you do not have a native method like the operator to round down. You would have to import a math library, and we'll talk more about these later on, that allows you to use a roundup method. This isn't normally just there accessible to you. You have to run this line of code called import math that allows you to use additional methods in math, right? And this right here, we see here, it will round up for you. So you can use floor division with 2 forward slashes to round down, but if you wanted to round up, you would have to import math, right? I just want to make sure I cover that in case anyone was curious. All right. I see enterprise level GPT is a game changer. Yeah, everyone's trying to implement their own AI. Almost every single company you go to, they're like, you know, they're just focusing all their money on AI. They like, some of them call them different stuff. They want to make their own, right? Everyone wants to make their own. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. So that's how you round down, and also in case anyone was wondering, how to round up. Modulus, we talked about remainder, right? So 23 modulus 2, it's going to give me a remainder of 1, I believe. Yeah, right? Because this fits into it 11 times, but we have that additional number after 22, right? So as we talked about, this will return to you the remainder. 23/4 is regular division, and this will return to you a float value if it does not divide equally. Actually, I think even if you divide equally, it'll still return to you a float value. Yep, I was correct. So it'll return to you a float value. All right. Do I have any questions before we move on to strings? So these are very basic operators. If you want more experience with any of this stuff, you can look them up. They're pretty much very interchangeable between languages. You can go to Python operators, and you'll see the different operators that you have. Everything that we just covered is pretty much here as well. Addition, subtraction. You can try your own. I think they now have exercises at the bottom They do. They now have exercises here that you can try it out. More like knowledge based. What will be the result of the following? So you can try these out after you read through them if you want to. I love W3 schools. It's pretty straightforward and user friendly. It's not very overwhelming. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. So we cover operators. The next thing we're going to be talking about is going to be strings, right? Strings, formerly called string literals, are immutable sequences of 0 or more characters. Who can tell me what immutable is or mutable?
It can or can't change. Immutable will not change. Mutable is configurable.
Correct, right? Immutable or mutable is whether something can be changed or not. Strings, which some of you guys might be a little confused about that, cannot actually change, right? And we see that here. Maybe I don't have it. Let me go ahead and create this. Let's say my name is equal to Roger, right? I'm gonna go ahead and print my name, but I'm gonna wrap this around ID. I'm also gonna be printing out my name itself. Let's see what it looks like. This variable has a string of Roger, right? So I print out the string, and I'm also printing the location of it, right? Print ID, my name. So this is where it's saved. Well, what happens if I try to change my name? What if I say my name is equal to, I see Scott here. Let's say it's equal to Scott. Let's go ahead and print this out now. Right, so when I first ran this, it prints out Roger, and this is where it's saved in memory. I then get the same variable called my name, but this time I changed it to Scott, right? And it prints out Scott, it changed, but notice that the memory address, it changes right here, right? After it's 2, it is now a 9. This is a complete different address in memory. These are not the same thing. Although the variable name is the same, the variable did not change. Well, Roger, what's happening then? Well, what's happening is I created a box, right? This box is my variable. It's called my name. It has Roger inside of it right now. But now here on this line where I try to add Scott, what happens is I took off the label of this box and moved it aside. And then I got this label and put it on this new box that has the value of Scott. There are 2 different boxes. I just switched the label to another box. Well, what happens to Roger then? Well, what happens is when you remove that label, we now lose the ability to access it, right? There's nothing for me to call upon it. It lost that variable name. So it's somewhere in memory. But I no longer have direct access to it because I removed the label off of it. So what happens? Well, by default, what your computer's going to do is it's going to find values that no longer are useful. And it's going to make it eligible for garbage collection, right? What that means is just going to delete it, right? It's like, oh, well, you're useless. There's no way to access you, right? You're not being used any longer. I'm going to put you in the garbage. And then I'm going to remove you later when it's time to remove you, right? That's what happens. So strings are immutable. When I try to update the string, my name, it doesn't update. It creates a whole new string with the same variable name. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Head nods, right on. Let's go ahead and move forward. Accessing strings. Here we have my string, and it has the sentence, this is my basic string. So we're able to print out, just like before, print my string. And let's go ahead and comment out some of these so they're not in the way. I can print out, this is my string. But if I wanted to, I could use what we call index notation, right? Index notation. that means I can access specific locations within my string. But what is index notation, Roger? Well, here we have a nice little graphic that shows you how index notation works. Normally in English, right, in our day-to-day life, when we count, we don't start at 0. We start at 1, right? If we have a group of, a bundle of apples, we will start 1 apple, 2 apple, 3 apples, right? We don't do that in coding, right? The way that we count, right, or we I guess numberize things, is in the form of index notation, and this starts at 0, right? It starts at 0. So this string that we have here, the string of Python, the very first letter or character in this string is going to start at number 0, right? And then is going to increase by 1 after every other character, right? Or every character afterwards. So the first letter starts with index 0, and then index 1, and then so on and so forth. You're also able to do backwards direction of indexing. If I wanted to access the last character in a string, I would do -1. Notice that this one doesn't start at like -0 because that's not a thing, right? And it doesn't start at 0 because 0 is referencing to the regular direction. Therefore, it starts at -1. Do you count spaces? Yes, you do. Spaces are also characters, right? They're treated as characters. So if you have spaces in your string, that will have its own index. That's a good question, Normal. Thank you. Right? So we start counting. The character in index 0 will return to me P. And we see that in action right here. In this sentence, this is my basic string. When I print out my string, it prints the entirety of it. But when I do my string index 0, it prints out the T and the word of this, right? It will grab that first character. And then if I uncomment everything out and I run this, it'll do exactly as intended. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It grabs this, and you don't see it, right? Because there's a space here. So obviously it's printing out a blank space. But notice that when I hover over the output box, there's a gap right here. It's actually printing out the space. You just don't see it. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and print out index 5 so you can see the gap. This space I, right? It's grabbing what's at index 4, which is a space. This is index 4. And then it's printing what's in index 5, which is the I. Right? So yes, it does take spaces into consideration. Any questions before I move forward? Right on. Let's go ahead. Next is going to be string immutability, which I just covered. We talked about how you can change strings. Notice here that when I try to grab something by the index and assign it something differently, it does not work, right? Because strings are immutable, so you can't do that. Even though you can access it, use the index notation. For those of you who have some experience with coding, and you access items in a list using index notation, you're able to change it. Because a string is immutable, you can't do that. But nothing stops us from redefining a string, right? And we kind of already saw that, so I'm going to go ahead and move forward. String operations and methods. Here, the first method we're going to talk about is slicing through the strings, right? We talked about how to print out a string. We talked about how to print out an individual character of a string using index notation. But what if you want to grab a sequence of characters, right? Well, we can also do that using the brackets, right? I'm printing out my string. Well, Roger, where is this coming from? Well, we defined it above, right? My string is right here. So even though these are two different cell blocks, Jupyter Notebooks is smart enough to understand that the variable was declared above. So I'm able to access it in a different cell block, right? Which is why I don't have to declare it again in this cell block, in case you're wondering where this is coming from. But notice that I print out my string, which is the sentence of this is my string. And then the next line, I do my string, which this might be confusing if I don't use the print statement. Jupyter Notebooks will by default print it out even if I don't put the print statement. So this is a little misleading. Just know that if you are working in a regular Python file, you need to put the print method here. It wasn't here before, which I do apologize. I need to update that. Like I said, Jupyter Notebooks by default will print it out anyways, which is not good. But there it is. This should be in a print statement. But it'll still do the same thing. Notice that we print out my string, and then afterwards I print my string, but within the brackets, I do something very specific. I see the number 11:18. Well, what is that doing? Well, before, when we access one character, all we had to do was just add specifically the index of where the character should be. But inside of brackets, we can add additional numbers in there. And here's the syntax for that, right? When accessing items using brackets, you can use a start and a stop point. Well, how do you separate where the number ends? Well, we separate it by using the colon, right? So the first number within the bracket will be the start point. The second number by default will be the stop point, right? If you only have one number in here, it's going to default to just that one number. When you add a secondary number, the first number is the start, the second number is the stop. So it's able to grab whatever is at index 11, which in this case, index 11 is the S. And what this is saying is, hey, I want to go from index 11 up to index 18, right? So it wants to stop at 18. Well, let's look at that. Let's look at the indexes. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm currently at index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, this is the wrong one. My bad. Here we go. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Right. So at index 11, that's where the S starts, which is correct, right? That bracket start point was 11. But well, let's go to 18. So we're currently at 11. Let's go 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Notice that index 18 is past the period, but it didn't print out the period, right? It only print. Oh, it did print out the period. I'm done. Ignore that. It can get very confusing when you're using the brackets. Okay, yeah. So index 11 was right here. So it grabbed what was after the bar. You see the bar right here? This is index 11, but it printed out the S, right? Because it's grabbing what's afterwards. So you would think if there was something like this is index 18. If it's doing the same functionality as before, it should print out this S as well. But it doesn't. Right? You see the S? It doesn't print out that S. So what that tells me is that the stop is up to, but not including what is at index 18. And maybe it'll make a little bit more sense in a little bit when we use lists. But I want you guys to know that the stop point within these brackets is up to, but not including, right? It is omitting whatever is at that stop point. Now, the next thing that you'll see here is the step. The step is optional. You don't need to use the step. By default, the step is set to 1. Well, what does that mean? Well, as it's grabbing the sequence of characters from 11 to 18, it's going in order. It's going to the next one. It's going to go 1 over, right? So this is going to print out S. plus 1 is T, plus 1 is R, plus 1 is I, and so on and so forth, right? It's stepping over to the right one character at a time. Well, what if I add step 2? Notice that this time I only get some characters, not all of them, right? It prints the S, but because I updated the step count to 2, it's going to go 1, 2, and then it prints the R. And then it's going to continue 1, 2, and it prints the N, right? The step count dictates from 11 to 18, how many characters to the right should I move forward? Make sense? By default, it is set to 1. So you don't even have to put it, because by default, it's set to 1. It'll grab the next one. Where it matters is if you're trying to skip an additional one and grab every other one, right? Now it skips it. I could even do 3. And so on and so forth. So you're able to customize from the start and to the end of the stream. What do you want to grab? And do you want to grab every single one? Or are you trying to step over a couple? Make sense? All right, I see something in the chat. Could you please give us an example of where this could be applied? That's a good question. It's very situational dependent. Well, let's say I have a classroom of students, right? And I want to create 2 groups, right? I want to create group 1, which is going to start from one point to another, and I want to skip over every other ones, right? So let's say I have like, let's do something like this. So let's say students is equal to Scott. I'm going to put here whoever I see. I see Scott. I see Dante. I see William. I see Daniel, Angel, and Nicholas. That's my son's name, Nicholas. But he's with a K, not a CH, because we want it to be unique. All right. So let's say I want to create group 1, right? This is just coming from the top of my head. I don't know if this is a good scenario. I want to start at index 0, right? And I want to get up to the end. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's go 6. And I want to grab every other person, right? Oh, my bad. I did this wrong. Do it. There we go. So I want to grab Scott. I want to skip 1. I want to grab William, skip Daniel, grab Angel, and then so on and so forth, right? That'll create one group. Group 2 is going to be a little bit different. Here, I'm going to start at index 1. So I'll start here. I'll grab Dante, skip 1, grab Daniel, and then grab Nicholas. Right? So I create 2 groups. Imagine this list of people was like 100 or 200 people long. I don't want to grab every single one individually, so I can just slice this list of names, start at a different point, and then skip over people. So I was able to create 2 different groups like this. Does that make sense? Hopefully that answers your question. So this is a way of doing it. Like I said, everything is situation. Everything that you will be taught in this class, they are tools, right? They are tools for your tool belt, right? These are, I'm showing you things that you can do with code, all the abilities in coding, all the features, how to write in code. I'm teaching you, if we were talking about English, I'm teaching you like adjectives, nouns, right? Like everything that goes to grammar. These are all tools to speak the English language. Same concept when it comes to Python. These are all tools. So how you use the slicing method, whoever asked, that's up to you, right? Very situational. So if you find a situation where you need to do something like this, split it into different groups, there's like 1,000 names You don't want to go through every single one. This is one way of doing it. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Let's go ahead and move forward because we are running out of time. All right. So what if you don't specify a start and an endpoint? By default, if you don't specify a start point, and you see that here, it's going to start at 0. So here I'm saying, hey, I want to slice this string. I don't care where I start, so just go ahead and start at its default location, but I want to go up to index 4. All right, so this is index 0 right here, index 1, index 2, index 3, and this is index 4. Notice that it does not print out index 4. It goes up to, but it does not include index 4. Right? It goes back to what I was trying to explain earlier. The stop point is it's up to, but not including. Right? So keep that in mind. But I didn't specify the start. I just left it empty. I put a colon and then I put an endpoint. But it knows with this colon here, when you add one colon, it knows to the left of this colon, this is the start, and to the right, this is the end. Make sense? So it was able to grab that first word. And I can do something fairly similar to the endpoint. Let's get rid of this minus right here. If I omit the endpoint, it's going to go to index 6, which is at the S. It's going to grab everything up to the end. So it's going to start at 6 and all the way to the end. Right? You saw here earlier that there was a negative here. What does that mean? Well, as you guys remember, we could do backwards notation. So what is negative 6? Well, that means we're going to start at the end. It's negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. Oh, okay. Negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, and then negative 6 is the R. So the start point is going to be at negative 6, which is at R. And the end point is going to be all the way to the right. Right? No, nothing specific here. So it's going to grab everything to the right of that start point. Make sense? So you can use negative notation to go backwards, or you can just use regular notation to go in order how it should be, and it'll start the notation from the left side, right? But notice here that the stop point is omitted. We're not putting anything here. So by default, it's going to grab everything. Well, what if, I think this will work. What if I just do colon, colon? Notice that when I just do colon, colon, I didn't put a start. I didn't put an end. So it's going to grab the entirety of this, right? What you saw earlier is I had another colon to specify the step. Let's put a 2. I'm going to grab from the start to the end, everything after every other character. So I grab the T, I skip the H, I grab the I, skip the S, I grab the space, and so on and so forth, right? What if I do negative 1? What is this going to do? Take a guess.
Start from the S before the period.
Yeah, it's gonna go negative wise, right? Notice that it reverses the entirety of the string. It's pretty cool, especially if you've done those coding challenges where it's like, oh, reverse your string. It's like a little cheat right here. So you can reverse a string using the step negative 1. Because it's going to go negative from the back. All right. I think this was like a try it section. Ignore this. Let's go ahead and move forward. I don't have too much left over here for today's class. These are all built-in methods that we cover. So let's go ahead and go through these. I'm not going to cover them individually too in depth. These are all situational basis. I just want to make sure that you are aware of their existence, right? Because, like I said, you don't have to memorize all these. I just need you to know that you can do this, that this is something that is available to you, the possibility of you doing this in Python. And I say that because I don't want you guys to get overwhelmed, like, oh, there's so many methods and there's so many rules. Like, I don't know. As long as you've been exposed to it and you know they exist, that's cool. Like you saw earlier, I was like, I know there's a way to round up. I just can't remember off the top of my head what the syntax is. And that becomes very important, especially when you start diving into other languages, right? When you start learning JavaScript, when you learn HTML, CSS, SQL, all these different languages have their own syntax rules. Some are more similar than others, right? If you're like me, you've worked with JavaScript and Java and C#, then it can get very confusing. The important thing is knowing how to find the answer. This goes back to what I was mentioning, right? Knowing how to find the answer, reading to documentation. So I want to make sure that you guys are exposed to these methods to know that they are possible. There's, you just need to make sure that you have them easily available. Ignore my, oh, never mind. I was going to show you guys my background. I got like a cheat sheet saved as my wallpaper on my screen because like, we're not computers. You're not going to memorize. I promise you, not a single one of you guys in this class is going to memorize every single method that exists in the Python language. It's just important to know what is out there for you guys and the ability that Python has. So whenever you encounter a situation like, man, I wish I could do this. I'm like, I remember doing this before in Python. I'm sure there's a way of doing it. You can just do a quick Google search, right? Kevin Williams, Google is my best friend. Absolutely. You're gonna realize, especially for those of you that actually decide to move forward with Platoon or just coding in general, that a big part of your job consists of you looking stuff up. So it's one of those software development. It's one of those careers that you're never done learning. I learn something new every single day, which one of the stuff that I love about this job is because it has that mental stimulation, right? You're constantly learning something. You're never going to be a subject matter expert of your craft. But let's go ahead and cover these. We have a way to capitalize stuff in text, right? And that's using the dot upper method, right? We have a prefix here of str, right? It's a string. So what this is saying, right? The syntax of this is telling me, hey, I'm going to grab some kind of variable that's supposed to be a string, and I have to invoke the method of dot upper. And I'll show you that in real time. Here we have a variable called text that says hello world. This variable is a string variable, right? It is a string variable because I saved the string into it, right? Notice that I'm writing it, or I'm invoking the upper method in the same syntax that I have here on this example. I call whatever variable is supposed to be a string, and then I do the dot upper, right? And when I print out whatever comes out of that, you'll see that it's going to return to me hello world. Let me print this out because I need to fix this. Right, hello world. Let me also print out text so you can see the difference. Right. The first variable is text. And the second variable, I'm creating a whole different variable called upper text. Right, these are two different variables, guys. Two different strings. Upper text is going to be the result that comes back after I use this upper method on the variable text. Right? So first and foremost, I create a string variable that's all lowercase. And then I grab this string variable and I grab this method that is going to convert it into all capital case, right? It molds it, creates a whole new different variable called upper text. But the original variable text never changed, right? All I'm saying is, hey, I want you to grab whatever is saved inside of text, capitalize, and give me the result of that, and save that into upper text. But this does not change what text is. Make sense? I'm able to print out both of these afterwards. Notice that text still remains the same, all lowercase. The upper text variable is a version of what text was, but all capitalized. And here we have the opposite side of the spectrum. Instead of upper, we have dot lower. Right here, we have this variable again called text. This time, the words are capitalized. We create a new variable called lower text, and the value of this variable is the result of what comes back after I invoke the dot lower method on this variable called text. Right? It's just the opposite end of the spectrum. Just one's capitalizing everything and one is lowercase and everything. Correct, Albert. It's basically altering how it's viewed when printed. Yes, it does not change the actual variable itself. It's going to alter how it's viewed, right? And then assign it to a whole different variable. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to pause here. I'm just going to go ahead and bite the bullet. We will cover the remainder of this tomorrow. The rest of this, guys, is just additional methods. And if you want to, I recommend you guys go through this on your own outside of class. It's just explain to you all the different methods available to you and how to use them. We will talk about interpolated strings tomorrow. We'll do this the first 30 minutes of class because this is all still very important. But I encourage you go through it on your own to ensure that we don't spend too much time tomorrow with questions so we can move on with the remainder of the curriculum. Let me go ahead and stop the recording. So because next class is Thursday, we have a couple days. I want you guys to continue reading this lesson. Go through interpolated strings. I'll still do a quick touch up on this on Thursday to make sure that we're all good on this. But at the very end of every single lesson, you're going to encounter some exercises. Some lessons have more exercises than others. Some of these can be a little confusing at first glance. You can maybe check the recordings from previous lectures if you want to see if we cover them or not. If not, you can also hit me up if you have any questions on it. What I do recommend is I want you guys to go to the exercise directory on the left, and you're going to find that I have created exercises for every single lesson we have. If you go to lesson 1, you should encounter I want to say somewhere between 5 to 10 questions. Some have more than others. It is not loading up. Okay, it's loading. Give it a bit. 2 lessons ago, so I didn't create the original curriculum. I expanded upon it and added more stuff. There was no lessons for additional extras before. These are new, so there's not too many of them. But to be fair, a lot of stuff is like very basic stuff. If you want to get more hands-on these things, I would go to places like W3 schools. Check out like Booleans or operators. As you saw, you do like checks on learning or exercises. You can try them out. There's other resources as well, as you saw within the pre-course, that you can go and try these things out. Like Free Code Cap is a good place to get more practice. This is taking too long. Let me refresh this. I know I promised a certain timeline, so if you guys have to leave, you are more than welcome to leave. I'm gonna go ahead and just continue with what I'm trying to show you guys here, so it's recorded for the record for anyone that wants to see this later. But the time is 9 p.m. That's going to conclude today's official class and lecture. Thank you guys for showing up today. If you did not fill out the attendance form, please, I encourage you guys to do it. Attendance isn't mandatory, but it helps us keep track of who showed up and who hasn't showed up for our records. There's nothing negative about it, but just for like marketing purpose for the future and stuff like that. So please fill out the attendance form from the start of class. I'm gonna go ahead and send it again. Here is the attendance form. It's very simple. It doesn't take more than like 30 seconds. Lesson 1 is struggling. I don't know why it's not loading up.
Roger, I got a quick question.
Yes.
I know with this week's schedule, I was under the impression that it would be Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I know we're skipping Wednesday this week, and we're probably moving that to Friday, correct?
Correct. It's going to be Monday, Thursday, Friday this week only. I do apologize. I did not expect to get back to the States as late as I am getting back, so I had to shift it over.
Okay, so in regards to that, would because I might not be able to make it to the Friday session, but would that affect, me being able to get into the Avenger platoon?
Negative. Thank you for asking that question. For those of you guys still here, that's a great question. For those of you worried about attendance, so attendance is not mandatory. You do not have to be a part of this course to get accepted to any of our programs. For example, let's say you make it through halfway or you just do the day. If you feel like you do not need this course or you can do it on your own, we encourage it. Do what feels better for you, right? It does not prevent you from applying to the course. You still can. So don't feel like, oh, I missed a day. I'm gonna lose the eligibility. That's not the case. Even if you don't show up for the rest of this course, you can still apply. I recommend you guys show up to every single course and you code along, you try examples, so you are successful, especially for Avenger Platoon. I cannot stress it enough. If you want to get accepted into Avenger Platoon, from today and until you finish your application, you got to be coding. You got to be coding if you want to be successful. Coding is one of those things that you have to put some hours. If you're in the situation where you still got months before the one that you want to apply to, you're not in that situation. But right now, the time crunch of 3 weeks, it's tough. It's very tight. It's tough because it's a lot to take in, right? So if you want to be successful, you kind of have to put in the hours. Does that make sense? Does referencing other sheets in Excel kind of coding? I mean, I think the hardest part is really, I don't think people struggle with coding per se or like the Python language. What I see that is the biggest issue with people on passing the application process is they have the tools, they just don't know how to apply them, right? That's the thing that I get the most, and you guys are probably gonna tell me the same thing. Like, hey, Roger, like, I get it, I'm understanding what this is, but when I read questions, I just brain dump everything. I don't even know where to start. Like, I don't even know how to use it or how to start. And that's the biggest issue. Like, problem solving is what tends to get people hemmed up on it. And you cannot learn problem solving skills or critical thinking skills without being put in those situations, which is why I see that the people that aren't successful are not successful because of that reason, right? Which is why you have to put in the time on your computer and be exposed to situations that force you to critical think, right, and problem solve. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Roger. It's because at the beginning of the class, I was having problems with copying and pasting the URL into the uh, into the search bar. So it made it easier for me to connect to the Zoom call on my phone while I had my computer, where I could, instead of just like switching between the Zoom call and GitHub and stuff like that.
Absolutely. No, that makes sense. But all right, here, so we can finish off, guys. If anyone wants to keep talking afterwards after I show this, that's fine. But I just want to show this. Here's the lessons, right? Notice that they're broken off to sections. Python syntax basics. You'll find 3 to 5 questions or exercises, variables, 3 exercises, constants. So I've added a good amount of exercises for almost every single subject. Some subjects are easier than others, and this does start very, very simple. So if you have experience coding, you might find this a little like out of scope or too easy for you. If you just started coding, especially in Python, this is good practice. So definitely go through these. And yeah, every single lesson that we have will have exercises like these. So please complete these. Nothing's gonna be checked. I'm not grading anything. Thomas asked, where can I find these? These are within the curriculum, right? This is under the exercises directory, right? So we were under lessons, but in the exercises you can find lesson 1 exercises. All right. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. That's all I have for today.